In the summer of 1996, investigators unearthed one of the most disturbing crime scenes in Indiana history. Hidden in the wooded area of an upscale estate in Westfield, a chilling discovery was made. Thousands of burned and broken human bone fragments scattered across the grounds of Fox Hollow Farm. These remains marked the beginning of the unraveling of a horrifying truth. The quiet, suburban property was the dumping ground for a serial killer. That killer was Herb Baumeister, a seemingly ordinary man whose secret life would shock the nation and leave a legacy of horror that still reverberates today. Welcome back to The Sky Opened, a true crime YouTube channel, where we dive deep in lesser-known cases. If you like what you see here, please subscribe, leave a like, and comment below what you thought about the case. Herbert Richard Baumeister appeared to live the American dream. Born in 1947 in Indianapolis, Indiana, he was raised in a seemingly stable household. His father, a respected anesthesiologist, expected high standards from his children. Despite the family's comfortable social standing, early signs of troubling behavior were evident in young Herb. He exhibited antisocial tendencies, including cruelty to animals and obsessive interest in death and decay, traits often associated with early indicators of psychopathy. These behaviors were dismissed as eccentricities or explained away by a potential undiagnosed mental health disorder, such as schizophrenia, which was reportedly considered by professionals during his youth. Baumeister struggled to fit in socially throughout high school. While other teenagers were forming bonds and exploring their identities, he was retreating inward, becoming increasingly isolated. Despite this, he managed to maintain a functional academic record and later attended Indiana University. However, he never completed his degree, drifting from one job to another and experiencing repeated failures in professional settings. His inability to conform to traditional expectations may have been masked by his superficial charm, a trait he would later use to deadly effect. In 1971, Baumeister married Juliana Saiter, a high school teacher. They appeared to be a conventional suburban couple, and over the next 2 decades, they had 3 children. Together, they founded and operated the Save-A-Lot thrift store chain, which brought financial stability and allowed them to purchase the expansive Fox Hollow Farm estate. The large property offered a sense of privacy and detachment from the community, qualities that would eventually aid Baumeister's secret life. Outwardly, Baumeister was a family man and entrepreneur, respected in his community and active in local affairs. He occasionally donated to charitable causes and portrayed himself as a dedicated husband and father. However, beneath the surface lay a fractured psyche. He was reportedly a demanding and erratic employer, known for bizarre behavior and mood swings. He struggled with his sexuality, likely compounded by internalized shame and societal pressures of the time. The duality of his existence, public respectability contrasted by private deviance, was both disturbing and dangerously effective. Beginning in the late 1980s and escalating through the mid-1990s, a pattern began to emerge in central Indiana and parts of Ohio. Young men, many of whom were known to frequent gay bars in the Indianapolis area, started to disappear without a trace. These cases, initially seen as isolated incidents, shared disturbing similarities. Victims were typically in their 20s or early 30s, often estranged from family, and most were last seen in gay nightlife districts. Their disappearances received limited media attention, reflecting the broader marginalization of LGBTQ+ individuals at the time. A key moment in the investigation occurred when a young man managed to escape from a dangerous encounter with a man who identified himself as Brian Smart. This individual lured him to a lavish home featuring an indoor pool, where he encouraged autoerotic asphyxiation. Although the survivor escaped, he recalled enough details about the home and the man to spark a renewed investigation. This information eventually led authorities to Herb Baumeister, whose home matched the description. Surveillance of Baumeister began, but legal barriers hindered immediate action. Without sufficient evidence to obtain a warrant, law enforcement found themselves in a frustrating position. The case took a critical turn when Juliana Baumeister, who had grown increasingly alarmed by her husband's erratic behavior and had discovered suspicious items around their property, agreed to cooperate. While Herb was out of state, she permitted a search of Fox Hollow Farm. What investigators uncovered was more horrifying than anyone could have anticipated. The wooded area behind the house had been transformed into a personal dumping ground. Bones were everywhere, scattered, buried, and burned. Forensic teams began the long and painstaking process of sifting through what would eventually amount to more than 5,000 human bone fragments. These remains represented at least 11 individuals, though due to the extent of the damage and commingling of remains, many could not be identified. The discovery at Fox Hollow Farm opened a floodgate of unresolved cases and led authorities to re-examine disappearances that had occurred across the Midwest. Some theorized that Baumeister was responsible for the Ohio Comte 70 murders, a string of homicides involving young men found along the highway corridor. Though never conclusively proven, the similarities in victim profile, method of disposal, and geography strongly suggested a connection. Baumeister fled to Canada during the early stages of the investigation. As law enforcement closed in, he took his own life in a car at Pinery Provincial Park in Ontario. His suicide note made no mention of the murders, only referencing personal and financial failures. His death closed the door on any chance of a confession and left dozens of questions unanswered. The aftermath of the case revealed systemic failures and societal prejudices. Many of the missing men were gay, estranged from their families, or living transient lives. Law enforcement at the time often deprioritized cases involving LGBTQ+ victims, contributing to the lack of urgency and continuity in connecting the cases. Additionally, the stigma surrounding homosexuality discouraged some victims' families from coming forward or publicizing their loved ones' disappearances. Juliana Baumeister later recounted a life marked by confusion and denial. She noted how Herb would often take the children on extended trips, during which he may have committed many of the murders. She had discovered odd items around the home, including mannequins posed by the pool and odd videotapes, but never imagined the extent of his crimes. Their sex life had reportedly been non-existent for years, and she described him as distant, secretive, and controlling. The indoor pool, a recurring setting in many accounts of the crimes, was off-limits to the rest of the family, yet played a central role in Baumeister's modus operandi. Herb Baumeister's case is frequently studied in criminology due to the psychological complexity he exhibited. He displayed traits of narcissism, antisocial personality disorder, and possibly sexual sadism. His ability to compartmentalize his life, operating a business, maintaining a family, and committing serial murders demonstrates the chilling effectiveness of organized killers. Unlike disorganized killers who act on impulse, Baumeister planned his encounters, controlled the environment, and left minimal evidence. Since the initial discovery, efforts to identify the remaining victims have continued. Advances in DNA analysis have helped match some bone fragments to missing persons reports, providing closure to a few families. However, many remains remain unidentified. The Indiana State Police and independent researchers continue to piece together clues, hoping to bring resolution to lingering mysteries. The Fox Hollow Farm case left an indelible mark on Indiana and the nation. It prompted changes in how missing persons cases, especially those involving marginalized communities, are investigated. It also highlighted the importance of public vigilance, the need for investigative journalism, and the responsibility of law enforcement to recognize patterns even in populations that have historically been ignored. Today, Fox Hollow Farm still stands, shrouded in its infamous past. The property has changed hands and remains a source of fascination for true crime enthusiasts and paranormal investigators alike. Some visitors claim the grounds are haunted not just by spirits, but by the memory of unimaginable horror. Herb Baumeister's story is a chilling reminder that monsters do not always hide in the shadows. They often exist in plain sight. His crimes robbed families of sons, brothers, and friends. The impact of his actions continues to ripple through time, not just in the evidence unearthed at his property, but in the pain, trauma, and unanswered questions left in their wake. Through continued forensic effort and public awareness, the hope remains that more of the unidentified victims can one day be named and their stories told. Only then can the full truth of the Fox Hollow Farm murders be brought into the light, and the lives lost to one man's darkness be properly honored. Thanks for watching. Please make sure to subscribe so you're always dialed in to true crime cases. Also, leave a comment down below what you thought about the case.